Okay, so we have 5-5, 5-6, 5-7,
Right.
Thursday, Friday, Monday,
Okay.
and then we're going to do another quiz on Tuesday.
And then we're going to do a review.
And then we do 5-8, 5-9 on
Tuesday.
Wednesday, Thursday.
And then Friday we're going to do another quiz.
No, I'd like to, but I don't think we're going to, because at some point between now and the end of the semester, and I may have mentioned this, we're going to do an NWEA math check.
Oh, do I have to do that?
No,
Woo!
just freshmen, sophomore, juniors. All the
Yeah!
math teachers have been asked to do kind of a, it's not going to be like something that's reported to the state, but it's just to see if there's any growth that's happened in the first semester. And so we'll probably end up doing that on Friday, because I want to take Wednesday, Thursday is your final. I can't remember which day. Probably Thursday. But Wednesday you won't have me in class, so all we have is Monday,
So
Tuesday,
next week?
the following week.
Oh.
Next week, so next week we do 5-5 today, 5-6 tomorrow, 5-7 Monday, quiz Tuesday, 5-8, 5-9 Wednesday, Thursday, NWEA Friday, and I'll probably on Friday hand out the final review.
Oh,
I'm not excited for the final one this class.
Okay, final review. No, that's not true. So final review, and then Monday, Tuesday, we'll be reviewing for the final, okay? So the NWEA quiz or check that we're going to do next Friday, I will set some goals for you guys, and if you meet them, then you'll have 100% on a quiz grade in the grade book.
Wow. Yeah.
Okay? So we'll look at what you had last spring and what you had this past fall, see which one was the better score, and that's going to be the one we're going to try and beat. Okay, we try and average 2 points a year. So since we're only halfway through the year, the goal will probably be 1 point growth. Okay, so that's the plan. So that means that since we're not going to end up doing a chapter test on this chapter,
Oh,
I'm going to probably load the final a little heavier in chapter 5.
that's okay. Can you just do chapter 4 and chapter 5? We'll be good.
All right, so let's talk about 5-5. 5-5 is talking about how to solve quadratics using square roots. Okay? And this is really important, so pay attention. This method only works when there is no x term,
Right.
middle term. It only works when there's no middle term. Okay? And so, as an example, we had something like this. Let's go 16. When we were factoring, we talked about always wanting to set things equal to 0, right? So, to factor this, I could go ahead and move the 16 over, and then I recognize this is a perfect square, this is a perfect square, and it's a difference of 2 squares. Actually, that doesn't work. I have to factor out what's common to both first, right? Are we watching?
Yeah.
Factoring out what's common to both first. This is a perfect square, this is a perfect square, right? So I get 4 times x plus 2 and x minus 2. Remember, a difference of squares, you just change the signs, but they're the same factors. Okay, if this is equal to 0, okay, I can divide both sides by 4, and it doesn't do anything, because that's still equal to 0. So then I can solve x is either 2 or negative 2. Right? Okay, so this section is showing you an alternative way to solve problems like this where there's no x term. So if we look at the very beginning, there is no x term, right? There's an x squared, but there's no x. So there's no middle term. Okay? So the way we would solve this using the method described in 5-5, instead of factoring, we're just going to divide both sides by 4 and then take the square root, remembering it's always plus or minus.
Well, that is so much easier.
So x equals plus or minus 2, which is what I got. Okay? This method also is helpful because there are times you're going to get a quadratic where if I subtract this, I don't have perfect squares, so I can't factor it.
But if I times it all by 5.
But if you divide everything by 5,
Oh, I was wrong.
right? Then take the square root, remembering the plus or minus. And now what we learned about simplifying roots comes to play. So that can't be something you just forget. So you're going to end up using that skill now to finish problems like this. So I can rewrite this, right? Square root of 16 is 4. Can I have a radical in the denominator? No. So the answer here is plus or minus 4 square roots of 5 over 5. So you can't forget how to simplify radicals because we're going to use it a lot in this section. Okay, so this section again is if there's no middle term, you can just have the constant on one side, the x squared term on another, and then solve. Now this is another really important piece that most people miss on a quiz question. Sometimes you're going to get quadratics that are in this form where they've got more than just x squared, x minus 2, x plus 4, whatever it is. Okay? Your goal is to get x by itself, right? Okay, so you do not at this point take the square root of both sides. This is where people make mistakes. They take the square root of this, and they take the square root of this, and they say 2 times x minus 2 equals 4. Can't do that. What you have to do is you want to get the term that's squared by itself. So you have to divide by 4, and then I get x minus 2 squared equals 4. Now I take the square root of both sides. Right? Now I'm going to solve for x. So x equals 2 plus or minus 2. 2 plus 2 is 4. 2 minus 2 is 0. So x is either 0 or 4. Okay, and we can check it. Go back into the very first equation. If it's 4, 4 minus 2, 2. 2 squared is 4. 4 times 4 is 16. Or 0 minus 2 is what?
Negative 2.
Negative 2. Negative 2 squared
Is 4.
times 4.
16. Are you okay?
So that's how we get both answers and how you check them. No, I think I might die.
I think you might need a drink.
This cold has been the longest of my life.
I was on one for 3 months.
It's always good to go back and check your answers because it's just a way. If you catch your own mistake, then you just save yourself points that you might have missed otherwise. So it's good. Okay, so the key here is you've got to isolate this before you take the square root. Okay, so let's go through the textbook check. So on this one, you could either factor it or use the method we've been going through in this section.
Right.
No.
No.
It has a middle term. You can't use this method. You have to factor.
Yeah.
Or complete the square or quadratic formula, which we're going to learn later. The goal in solving a quadratic, should be quadratic, not quadratics, using square roots is to isolate the x squared term. True. The equation 11 plus x squared equals 4x squared plus 5 could be solved using this strategy. True, because there's no x term. But you're going to have to go ahead and combine your like terms, get your x's on one side and your constants on the other, and then you could use a strategy. Okay, you've simplified a quadratic to this point. Your next step would be to take the square root of both sides. False. You have to divide by 3 first. You've got to isolate that x minus 4 term. Then you can take the square root of both sides. And finally, I embedded questions into the video. That was true. Questions on this section? Okay. Hopefully no one ever watches this video again, or you're going to be
Yeah, it's not a.
listening. Okay, I'll get it up.